Welcome to Business Smarts Radio with Tom and Dr. Dave, the clean approach to building your successful business. Now, let's introduce Tom Borg and Dr. Dave Miles. Welcome to Business Smarts Radio with Tom and Dr. Dave, where we bring you the clean approach to building your successful business. And by clean, we are not talking about spick and span and dust mops. This podcast is all about the acronym CLEAN. We're all about communication, leadership, engagement,
and no drama.
So today we're going to continue on the series that we've been on, talking about bridging the performance gaps in your leadership team. We talked about an assessment-based, data-driven approach that we call critical alignment that we use to be able to train boards and executive leadership teams and leadership teams in an organization. And one of the things we wanted to do is break that down into more of an individual level and a manager direct report level, so you could really be able to implement some of these, not just looking at the team as a whole. So last episode, we talked about 2 ways to create a clear communication culture. And with that, we looked at specifically, whether it's through an assessment or not, looking at having a list of people on your team and that you report to that are peers, colleagues, or direct reports, ways to communicate with somebody, and more importantly, ways not to communicate with somebody. And the thinking behind this is really starting to look at the moving from that golden rule mentality to the platinum rule mentality. I'm not going to communicate with somebody based on how I like to be communicated with. I want to try to have empathy, and I want to reach out and I want to meet them halfway and communicate with them in the way that they would like to be communicated with. So today we're going to give you 4 do's and don'ts to prevent miscommunications. 4 do's and don'ts, how to prevent miscommunications. And so we're going to go through 4 kind of big rocks, major groupings for behavioral and communication styles. And we're going to give you some 3 do's and 3 don'ts for each of those based on some kind of people reading behavioral clues that at least get you in the ballpark. And we have a cheat sheet here. And Tom, tell our listeners a little bit about the cheat sheet and what they can do to get what we're using today for our episode.
Absolutely. Dave, so this is a sheet that we use with all of our clients. It actually is part of their report. And I always tell them, hey, make a copy of this, have it in your desk, have it in your satchel when you're on a call with a client so that you can refer to it. It's a very easy way to assess the type of people you're speaking with in regards to how they would prefer to be communicated to. So it's a neat little sheet that can do a great job of at least getting you started in working with that person in a discussion or a conversation, getting it off on the right foot. That's the way we like to look at it.
Okay, no, it sounds great. Well, like I said, you've got our information below. Just reach out and ask for the cheat sheet for communication, and we'd be more than happy to send you that PDF right over to you. So when you're looking at the way people deal with problems and challenges, okay, that's the first, that you have people that are direct. And you're like, okay, that's great. I can pick up a report. I can look at it. Right? But what if you don't have that information? You're dealing with a client, you're dealing with a vendor, you're dealing with a prospect. How do you find that out? Well, here's a couple of behavioral clues. If you're trying to communicate with somebody who is ambitious, or at least they come across this way, you don't know them for sure because you maybe don't know them that well, but they come across as maybe being ambitious or forceful. Maybe they come across as being decisive or really kind of strong-willed, kind of independent and goal-oriented. What are 3 things that they should do to be more effective in their communication?
Well, right off the bat, with a person like that, we want to be clear, specific, brief, and to the point. You don't want to be talking about yesterday's ball game. You want to be right in there talking about the specific things that are part of what you want to communicate to. They don't have a lot of time. They don't want to waste time. So you want to be very clear with them. Another thing to keep in mind, another factor, is to stick to business. Don't wander off the ranch, so to speak, but stay on task, on target. That'll help them get what you want to share with them in a short period of time. And that's where they're going with this. They want to get it done in a short period of time. Finally, the last one, be prepared with support material in a well-organized package. So make sure you do your preparation ahead of time, that you walk into that meeting or that one-on-one conversation with them, that you have your ducks in a row, so to speak, and that you can demonstrate you've done your homework and you're ready to communicate to them valuable information in a short period of time.
Oh, very true. This is one of those ones we talk about being clear, specific, and to the point, having that executive summary,
Mhm.
boom, but then also having that data behind there so they don't have to read 59 pages to get to the point. They can get to the point, but you have the well-organized support material. So when they ask deep probing questions, you have it and you look like you're on the ball, you're well organized because you have all
Mhm.
that material. So
Exactly.
what are some factors that, let's say, the don'ts? We talk about do's and don'ts. So those are the do's. Those are 3 do's on communicating with them. So what about 3 don'ts?
Sure. So 3 things you don't want to do with that type of behavioral style, that high D, is talk about things that are not relevant to the issue. Don't start bringing up another project and mix it in with this one. That's not going to be effective when dealing with a person like this. Next, leave loopholes or cloudy issues. So in other words, you don't have all the answers, or well, we'll get to that later, or that's something I haven't really thought through. That's not the thing you want to be saying to that type of person. And lastly, appearing disorganized. If you walk in there and you can't find something, or oh gosh, I guess I forgot to download that yesterday to my laptop. These are excuses that person is not going to have patience for. So those are just 3 things you don't want to do with that type of behavioral style.
Yeah, things that are just a turnoff. And like I said, those are ones that you can, if you avoid those, you can certainly prevent miscommunication. All right, so the next one, how do people look at people in contacts? How do they deal with people and contacts that are around them? So we're looking at somebody who's more of an outgoing type of person. And with that, you're looking, let's just say you're picking up cues that somebody's very magnetic, they're enthusiastic, they're friendly, they're demonstrative. They're just, when I say political, I'm not talking political like donkeys and elephants political. I'm talking about they can work a room. They know how, from an office politics type setting, they can, you know what I mean? They're the kinds that like to go to the networking events, shake hands, kiss babies. I mean, that type of, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I mean when I talk about political. So, what are some 3 things that they can do that would be positives on how to improve communication? The do's, let's just say, for someone who's outgoing.
Well, David, I can speak from experience in this because I am a high I. I'm a very high influencer, at least according to my report here. So, in any event, you would want to provide a warm and friendly environment.
Okay.
People like that, they just like to have a few friendly words in the beginning. Hey, what about how you doing? They don't want to get right down to business. They want to have a little bit of uh, an opportunity to get to know the other person, just kind of talk about things outside of business or work. Next, you don't want to deal with a lot of details. If you do, put them in writing because that type of person typically needs a little bit more structure and they like it when they can see things written out and they can refer back to them. That's just how we think. Then ask feeling questions to draw out their opinions or comments. So what I'm saying there is how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts on this? So in other words, it's not just
Mm.
all you talking at them, it's giving them time to respond and share with you what they perceive to be their perspective on the concern you're bringing up or the information you're sharing with them.
I like that. You're not drowning them in a sea full of data that they
Mm,
may not be interested in. And also, I like that to draw their comments and opinions. Well, how do you feel about that?
mm-hmm,
And I like that kind of personal perspective because when you're looking at things, same thing we were talking about big rocks and how to categorize on the fly when you're trying to just look at observable behavior. You look at, let's just say, pace in people. Easy way to remember it, pace in people. So you fast paced or slow paced? Are you people oriented or are you task oriented?
mm-hmm,
Pace in people. So the 2 we just talked about, the direct person and the outgoing person, they're both of those are fast paced. The direct person is more task oriented. The outgoing person is more people oriented. But they're
that's right.
both fast paced. So they want to go. They want to go. So what are a couple of things that would really kind of create some tensions? Just the don'ts. What are the don'ts when
Well,
communicating with someone who's outgoing? That people oriented, fast paced person.
well, right off the bat, don't be curt, cold, or tight-lipped with that person. Don't try to just be short and to the point. That's not a good way to deal with that person in the beginning at all. Don't
Okay.
try to control the conversation. Give them a chance to have some input to respond. Next, drive on facts, figures, alternatives, and abstractions. So don't be this type of focused person that's all about business and just drives on and on and on. Just don't do that. If you do, you're going to be tripping up as you start that conversation. It's going to get off on the wrong foot for sure.
Gotcha. No, that sounds good. Like I said, you definitely want the I still think the what not to do a lot of times is more important than the what to do.
Yes.
But yes, when you can couple them both together, that's awesome. So let's go to the other side of the spectrum. So we talked about the fast paced end of it, whether they're task oriented or people oriented. Let's go to the slower paced. Let's go more slower paced, people oriented. This person, they look at the way the pace and the consistency of their environment. So this person is more of a predictable person. And so if you're picking up these behavioral cues and your communication, they seem to be very patient, very predictable, very reliable, very steady, just kind of relaxed and just modest. If you're starting to pick up those behavioral cues, what are three things that you want to do to effectively communicate with them?
Well, as you mentioned, Dave, this person is people oriented, so you want to take that into consideration. And the first thing would be to begin with a personal comment to break the ice. So they may not be extroverted, but they like people. They like being around people. So to start with that type of a comment is a great way to begin a conversation with that type of an individual who's steady and reliable. Second, if you're going to present your case, do it softly and unthreateningly. Don't demand, don't say this is how it is, but present your case in a way that is tactful and provides for that person room to understand that you have their concerns in mind as well. And finally, the last one, ask how questions to draw out their opinions. So in other words, as you're discussing this information with them, ask them, well, how do you feel about this? Could you tell me more? So in a sense, ask some open-ended questions. They're going to draw them out, draw them into the conversation. So they're feeling that they're part of this as well.
Yeah, because if you're dealing with someone who's slower paced and people oriented, how do you think we could do that? How do you think we could make that happen? How do you think we could accomplish that? It's really putting that great brain they have into action, and they're really, instead of just throwing something intuitively that's right off the cuff. I think we do ABC, really quick. It gives them that time to really sit down and process it. And when they give you an answer, it's a very well thought out answer, and that's something you really want to listen to. That's a big advantage on asking those types of things. But yeah, all of those really do help fall into the category of that, really people oriented, slower paced. But what are some things that just don't quite work? What are the don'ts when dealing with this?
Sure. Things that we don't want to do with a person like this, things like rush headlong into business. Be able to just, here's what I got. I've got to do this. Just dive right into it. That's not going to get any points for you.
Rattling off bullet points in a machine gun fashion.
Yeah.
Not quite so good, huh?
Well, what's interesting is too often people don't realize it, but people in the first 11 seconds decide whether or not they want to talk to you, whether they like you or they don't like you. And that has to be reestablished every time we have this interaction with them. So the fact is, these are things that are going to help you get it off on the right foot. Next, don't be domineering or demanding. Again, that's a big turnoff for a person that's steady and that's reliable and sociable. They want to be able to they want to have a part of that conversation. So don't be domineering and demanding. Third one, don't force them to respond quickly to your objectives. Give them time to respond. Let them process the information. Let them give you the answer in the way they feel comfortable giving it to you, at the pace they want to give it to you.
If you're a fast-paced, task-oriented, very direct person, and you come in and just vomit three bullet points on them instantly, which is one of the things this is not to do, and then you're wanting an answer on those three things immediately, you're not respecting the fact that person is a slower paced people person, that they need a little bit of time to think and process. If you give them that time, you'll be happy with the results that you end up getting, because you'll have, like I said, a different thought out answer than you would otherwise. And, it doesn't put all the stress on them. That's for sure. So no, that's three great points. So let's go to our last one. And we're looking at really how people deal with the procedures and constraints put on them by their outside environment. So for this, we're looking at it runs on a continuum from compliant on one end to pioneering on the other. So let's go with the more compliant end of it. When you're communicating with somebody who is really kind of neat and conservative and dependent and really like perfectionist, we're data driven, just very careful, very compliant, you're thinking, engineers, CPA, that kind of stuff. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but computer program, but you're thinking that kind of really detail-oriented type of person. What are some do's for that?
Well, with this type of person, remember, they're more introverted. and they're more task oriented. So you want to prepare your case in advance. Okay. They're going to be paying attention to any details that you're going to be offering. So that's important to them. You want to stick to business with this person. You don't want to wander off the ranch. You want to be able to stick on the trail and be able to follow that line of discussion. Finally, be accurate and realistic. This person is not going to respond well to exaggerated claims or things that are very generic or general. So these are just three things that we're talking about now, but this will help you get that conversation off on the right foot and in a way that you're going to have a more receptive individual to communicate with.
Right. Because if you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, well, this person is slower paced, task oriented,
Mm-hmm.
data and details are important to this person.
Oh, yeah.
If you're thinking, okay, well, if you're task oriented, you want to stick to business. You want to make sure, and not just you're making it up on the fly, you're preparing your case in advance, but that accurate and realistic is like, oh, it's monumental, it's the best ever, it's the biggest, it's the brightest, it's the all these superlatives, just turn them off. Show me data, show me what you have. What do you have? What can you come up with? That it's not just this over the top thing that can just really drive them insane.
Mm-hmm.
So what are to finish up with these, what are three things that are the don'ts when you're communicating with somebody who's that more compliant type of behavioral style, who's, like I said, the slower paced but very task oriented, very detail oriented type of person? What are the three don'ts?
Sure. Well, first, don't be giddy, casual, informal, or loud. They don't want a person to come across as braggadocious, slap them on the back, be boisterous. That's not going to work. Leave that approach at the door. Next, don't be domineering. I'm sorry, don't push too hard or be unrealistic with your deadlines. So in other words, don't say, well, here's what we got to do, and then you're going to have that done by this afternoon, right? No, 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 no. Remember, this person operates a little slower. You got to give them time to do this in a reasonable amount of time that's going to be within their expectations. So don't push too hard on being unrealistic with your timelines. And then finally, don't be disorganized or messy. Again, this person respects order, and you better demonstrate that if you want to get their cooperation in the way you want to get it.
Yeah, and one thing that really struck out to me is when you were talking about number two, is that pushing too hard and being unrealistic with deadlines. We need deadlines, we need accountability, we need things to get done in a certain time. But think specifically about these folks that doing their job right is important. Being precise is important. Making sure they have the data to back it up is important. And a lot of the things that are very important to these folks aren't. It isn't something that you can just, I'm going to go with my gut instinct and just put something down real quick and roll with it. It's not just intuition. It's, I want the facts. I want the research. Show me what's the page number? What's the citation? I mean, where can I go back and confirm this? And that doesn't just roll off the tongue. That's something that takes a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So giving these folks the time that they need, but may not be able to, you still got to put some realistic deadlines on it. But when you're unrealistic with it, you're just pushing too hard, they're not able to do the quality work they want to do. It really puts a lot of stress on them. Ends up putting a lot of stress on you, because if you're that kind of really direct person that's, hey, we got to get this done, or pushing too hard, the problem ends up being you get an inferior product, doesn't look good on you. So it's just stress all the way around. So that
That's
one
right.
just really jumped out at me. So we talked about 4 do's and don'ts to prevent miscommunication. And we talked about that for someone who's a direct communication style, that task oriented, fast paced. We talked about it for somebody who's outgoing, who's fast paced and people oriented. We talked about that for a more predictable style, which is kind of a slower pace and people oriented. And then we also talked about that for a kind of compliant behavioral style, which is more of the slower pace, but very task oriented type of structure. So looking at that, you've got some do's, you got some don'ts. Like you said, I love the idea of the cheat sheet, use it all the time. If you want a copy of that cheat sheet in a PDF form, just reach out to either Tom or myself. Be more than happy to get that to you. But what are some final thoughts that you have, Tom, about using these types of tools to really look at this observable behavior and make that jump from golden rule thinking to platinum rule thinking?
Well, I think the tools are available. We've got to use them. It's like everything else in life. If we wait to know and not to do is not to really know. Someone once said. So I guess that's my piece of advice here. And to sum this up is that utilize the tools that are available to you when it comes to communicating with other people. If you do, you'll just be that much further ahead when it comes to creating the kind of results you want in the long run.
Well, and absolutely. And I'll leave with one thing for our viewers. If you think about John Maxwell talks about leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And the better you can communicate with somebody, the better you can increase your level of influence. And so by default, the more effective of a leader that you can become. So thanks for watching. And we appreciate you being here as a listener for Business Smarts Radio. And we will see you on our next episode. Take care.